Lots of questions lately about superdelegates. Bernie Sanders handily won the New Hampshire popular vote in the primary for the Democrats, but Hillary Clinton still came away with more delegates in total because of these unpledged superdelegates that are broadly believed to be supporting Hillary Clinton regardless of the election's outcome. Now, we can argue over whether if Bernie Sanders continues to win primaries, those unpledged superdelegates will not come over to the Bernie Sanders side. That's a debate we can have, but let's not have it today. What I want to talk about today is that DNC chair Debbie Wasserman Schultz, 2008 campaign co-chair for Hillary Clinton, widely considered to have her finger or her hand or her entire arm or her entire body on the scales for Hillary Clinton in this primary race, was interviewed by CNN's Jake Tapper, and she was asked, what do you say to those who question the role of these superdelegates and don't like what's going on? What do you say to them? And what she said, Lewis, was so telling. She really got to the reality here. Let's take a look and listen.
And in New Hampshire, the unpledged delegates are a separate category. The only thing available on the ballot in a primary and a caucus is the pledged delegates, those that are tied to the candidate that they are pledged to support, and they receive a proportional number of delegates going into our convention. Unpledged delegates exist really to make sure that party leaders and elected officials don't have to be in a position where they are running against grassroots activists. We are, as a Democratic Party, really highlight and emphasize inclusiveness and diversity at our convention, and so we want to give every opportunity to grassroots activists and diverse, committed Democrats to be able to participate, attend, and be a delegate at the convention. And so we separate out those unpledged delegates to make sure that there isn't competition between them.
Right. We want to be as inclusive and diverse as humanly possible, but only when it comes to those pledged delegates. And we're going to separate out a whole bunch of unpledged delegates so that we can keep out the grassroots activists and basically limit this to establishment Democrats supporting establishment Democrats, no matter what the turnout of the election is. It's a shocking admission, Lewis, though it is precisely correct. We have the superdelegate system, and the system is de facto rigged, protecting the party establishment. This is by definition anti-democratic. It is anti-democratic in that you have certain political positions which get you a vote in this nomination process that is not in any way tied to the actual election results, which is how democracy is done, people voting.
Yes. And I don't think she was even thinking about it when she said this. I think she just, she understands what these superdelegates are, why they exist, and she probably wasn't thinking about the context of this election.
Right.
And so, well, I guess it didn't stop Bernie, did it?
It didn't stop Bernie, at least not in New Hampshire, and we will talk about what's going on in Nevada coming up, but stunning, stunning admission. I don't even think she realizes it is an admission, but it is an admission by Debbie Wasserman Schultz. We'll take a break. What a show we have for you today. Allegations are surfacing in the wake of the passing of Supreme Court Justice Antonin Scalia that he was murdered. We are already seeing many on the right start to sort of imply and focus on very specific elements of reports that have been out there. The understanding over the weekend was that 79-year-old Supreme Court Justice Antonin Scalia died in his sleep of natural causes, and there is absolutely no controversy here. However, here are, as I understand them, the sort of different bits and pieces that some are putting together to paint this as a potential deliberate killing of the Supreme Court Justice Antonin Scalia. Number one, it reportedly took hours for authorities in West Texas, which is very remote, to find a justice of the peace, according to officials. And when they did, Presidio County Judge Cinderella Guevara pronounced Scalia dead of natural causes without ever seeing the body. This is the first piece, Lewis, that some are pointing to say it's suspicious. Hold on a second, though. That is absolutely permissible under Texas law. You don't need to order an autopsy. You don't need to see the body. Whether this is a good idea or not, that is a different question. But this is the law. There is nothing controversial about that whatsoever. Next, there were conflicting reports about whether an autopsy should have been performed. A manager at the El Paso funeral home where Antonin Scalia's body was taken said that Scalia's own family made it very clear that they did not want an autopsy. One of two other officials who were called, who couldn't get to Scalia's body in time, said, "We would have gone about this differently." Juanita Bishop, for example, a justice of the peace in Presidio, Texas, said, "If it had been me, I would want to know, meaning she would have ordered an autopsy. But again, Lewis, this is circumstantial opinion. It's not really indicative of anything on the facts, is it?
That's true. But there is one interesting fact you're about to bring up, and that is that he was discovered in the hotel room with a pillow over his face, right?
This morning, right-wing website drudgereport.com linked to an article that talked about many elements of the passing of Supreme Court Justice Antonin Scalia, but it highlighted a comment made by Houston businessman John Poindexter, who owns this 30,000-acre luxury ranch where Antonin Scalia was found dead, and he is quoted as saying, "We discovered the judge in bed, a pillow over his head. His bedclothes were unwrinkled." So the implication, of course, Lewis, if Scalia was merely sleeping, why on earth would he have a pillow over his head? Alluding to images of someone being choked to death, strangled to death effectively by a pillow placed over their head. Of course, this again is just assuming so much, Lewis. It could have been that Scalia had already started tossing in the early morning hours. And as some people might do, maybe to block light or for whatever reason, puts a pillow over his head and then dies in his sleep. I mean, it is the the length to which the right, some on the right are already going to say this is all very, very suspicious. And right now, what a coincidence. Maybe a Democrat is not going to win, and they're putting in now by taking out Scalia, President Obama has the opportunity to nominate a new Supreme Court justice. Listen, if the idea was to kill off a conservative Supreme Court justice so that Obama could nominate a new one, they could have been a little bit smarter and have done it with more time before the election, right? To not cause this huge rush that now is going to take place. I think it is incredible that we're already seeing this, not even 48 hours later. I mean, it's just amazing.
Yeah, and well, a tidbit like that about the pillow, it's unavoidable at this point. It is. It's quite. So I think it's fine. Get the autopsy if that will ease everyone's concerns.
Hold on a second, though. Isn't it the family's right to choose? I mean, it's crazy we're talking about this with Scalia, right?
I know.
The family has opted out. They don't want it.
That's fine. That's fine. I don't think he was in the best shape. He was certainly not a young man. Okay, I don't find it crazy that he died of what they're saying is his heart attack or his heart stopping. But what's the harm in getting the autopsy? If it'll shut everyone up, you get the autopsy, you find out for sure. And let me just add that I frequently have a pillow over my head when I'm sleeping.
Lewis almost exclusively sleeps with one or two pillows over his head. Nothing suspicious about that. And Lewis still comes to work every day. So listen, that's what's going on there. We'll continue to follow it. Let's update you about what's going on the Democratic side. Last week, I told you that polling in Nevada and South Carolina, the next two Democratic primary states, had Hillary Clinton well ahead in both, up 20 points in Nevada. But we were aware that we didn't really have recent polling from Nevada last week. I got a ton of emails over the weekend saying, David, there is a new poll in Nevada and Bernie Sanders is tied with Hillary Clinton in Nevada. And I said, I have to see this. This cannot be true. And it is true. There is a poll that has Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton tied in the upcoming Nevada primary. But the poll is from the Washington Free Beacon and Target Point Consulting, both right-wing organizations. Why would it matter, though? They're just polling Democrats. Well, if you believe that the Republican Party wants Bernie to be the Democratic nominee because they think it will be easier for a Republican to defeat Bernie than it would be to defeat Hillary, then you could suggest that right-wing pollsters would have an interest in making it seem as though Bernie is more viable than he is. But what really matters is the methodology. That's where the truth is. And when we looked at the methodology, Lewis, we found there was a sample size of 1,236, which is perfect. We saw a margin of error plus or minus 3%, which makes sense. This poll included all registered voters, 2/3 of whom responded that they are definitely voting, 45% of which have caucused in the past. So reasonable. I mean, a reasonable model and distribution of who is included in this poll. The poll did have both negative Hillary and negative Bernie questions. Like, for example, would you vote for Hillary Clinton in spite of the fact that she would kill babies if given the opportunity, right? They throw in these negative questions, but those were after just asking who would you vote for, and there were negative questions about Bernie as well. So that made me think this does seem like a pretty legit poll. And then Nate Silver's 538.com said, based on their analysis, there is a 50-50 shot for each candidate in Nevada. So, Lewis, it looks like Nevada is now very much in play. It feels like Groundhog's Day. State after state, we say, hey, Hillary's got this one. Maybe she doesn't. Maybe she doesn't.
People are feeling the burn.
Wow.
What other explanation is there, Dave? They're feeling the burn.
I don't think there is much of another explanation there. No question about it. Hey, I think you're really going to like this. On Morning Joe, Morning Joe is the MSNBC program. Former Republican Congressman Joe Scarborough is a host. Mika Brzezinski is on there. They've got Willie Geist. It's a whole cast of characters. The day after the New Hampshire win, Donald Trump called in and he talked about how he's so glad to have Joe Scarborough as a supporter of his. And immediately you see Mika Brzezinski and Joe Scarborough, their eyes go wide. They don't know what hit them, Lewis. They don't want to be identified publicly as Donald Trump supporters. They start talking over each other in a desperate attempt to backtrack and sort of say, well, by supporters, you mean we thought you had a chance here, kind of. But I mean, I'm not really sure. It's amazing. Let's listen to it. You're going to love it. I love it.
Well, Donald Trump, congratulations. How's your family holding up at this point?
Everyone's great. It was great seeing you, and you guys have been supporters, and I really appreciate it. And not necessarily supporters, but at least believers. You said there's some potential there, and the same thing with Bob. Bob has been a real professional, whereas other people were looking and saying, well, wait a minute, he's very successful as a developer and a business guy, but he's not a politician. And Bob got an early glance, and I appreciate Bob's fair reporting in the Washington Post very much so.
Okay.
Well, I will tell you what, when you say supporter, you're talking about how actually you're talking about Bob, Mika, myself also helping Willie and those of us around the table. There were a handful of people who for 6 months have been saying what happened last night could happen.
Yeah.
And the rest of the media world has been
But let me clarify what supporters
has
means.
been mocking and ridiculing exactly what he's done.
This is kind of important because from the get-go, I mean, I don't agree. Donald and I have not agreed on things ever since we started talking about pageants on Morning Joe. So it's not like Donald and I have the same worldview. You guys might in some ways, but we knew that he could do this from the get-go. So I think the sense is that we believed that his talents actually could follow through and translate into something while everyone else underestimated him.
All right,
let's cut it there. So the reality is Joe Scarborough has openly bragged that he helped Donald Trump prepare for his first debate. There have been rumors, and what Donald Trump said there, it was so good to see you. What he meant was there's rumors that the previous night, both Mika Brzezinski and Joe Scarborough met up with Donald Trump to celebrate the fact that he won in New Hampshire. And again, I guess they kind of wanted to keep it a secret, but CNN reported it anyway. And then the entire, this is just so funny. And I get it. Mika Brzezinski does not agree with Donald Trump politically. There's no doubt about that. But the visible panic and desperation to explain away what Donald Trump is talking about here, this is a golden media moment, Lewis. I absolutely relished watching the awkwardness on both of their faces.
Yeah, Joe wasn't too quick to kind of dismiss the support thing.
No,
right?
well, yeah, I mean, I think nobody knew what to do, right? And it is undeniable.
Deer
at
in
this
the
point,
headlights moment.
Deer in the headlights moment. I just absolutely love it, and you gotta love this stuff. Is this happening again on the Democratic primary side? Yesterday, I told you that Nevada is now in play, right? We had a yes, admittedly Republican poll, which had the race 50-50 in Nevada. 538.com also says Bernie Sanders basically has a 50% chance of winning the Nevada primary. And now we see new data from South Carolina. Could South Carolina now be in play, considered to be an absolute Hillary Clinton stronghold? Let's look at the data here. Looking at the Real Clear Politics average of polls, you'll notice that in June of 2015, mid-June, Bernie Sanders had 4.7% support in South Carolina. And in July and August, and it's in September, it crept into the double-digit support level, reaching 20% by October 15th of 2015. And then it dropped a little bit in November and then recovered in December. And then in January, it really started popping up. And according to the most recent data we have from South Carolina, Lewis, Bernie Sanders has increased his support to 35.5% in that state of South Carolina, presumed to be definitely a huge win for Hillary Clinton. Now, let's be sober and nuanced here. Bernie Sanders' support has increased more than 7 times over in South Carolina since mid-June of 2015. He is still down by an average of 24 percentage points in recent polls, but the trend is there.
Yes. So it might be another Iowa situation. If he keeps gaining momentum like this, he could close the gap, right?
February 20th, we will have the Nevada caucus for the Democrats. That is this Saturday, right? Yes, Saturday. If Nevada ends up going 50-50, and there's every indication right now that Nevada has become a 50-50 state for Democrats, you then have another week before the South Carolina Democratic primary, and anything could happen. With this trend line, if Bernie again comes away from Nevada with 50%, again, we have these superdelegates who can do whatever they want, and we've already heard from some of them that they will be doing absolutely whatever they want, meaning supporting Hillary Clinton, regardless of who wins the popular vote. Let's ignore that at least for now. Then, if we see that momentum, another 5 points for Bernie means 5 fewer points for Hillary, and he could come away in South Carolina with around 40% of the vote, and that would be, I mean, we can't even say how huge that would be. It would be absolutely incredible.
Yeah, so we're not going to count anything out here. Any of this is perfectly possible. Bernie could win both states, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, yes, Bernie could win.
You're not going to
both
say
states.
it's impossible for Bernie to win both states.
I am not going to say it is impossible. Anytime you have 2 people on the ballot, and they will be on the ballot on election day, either of those people could win, no doubt about it. Being realistic here, yes, Bernie has gained significantly in South Carolina. He's still down more than 20 points. Can you close 20 points in 10 days?
But that's when he does his best, is right before the day.
Fair enough. Absolutely. Lewis is clearly more bullish on this than I am. I think Bernie Sanders will get more than 35% support in South Carolina, right? That's where he is now. I think he will get more than that. I don't know how much more. Let me know what you think. I'm on Twitter at @Pakman. Lewis is on Twitter at @LewisMotamedi. And newly, Lewis, I am on Instagram. I am David.Pakman on Instagram. And I know Lewis loves it. Lewis is just on fire about my Instagram account. Remember this whole backstory of Donald Trump threatening to run as a third-party candidate, but then signing that pledge, which was worth absolutely nothing, saying he wouldn't run as a third-party candidate. And then he was interviewed at a couple of Republican debates ago. And after the debate, he said, oh, no. Listen, I love what the Republican Party has done. They've embraced me. I've loved participating in these Republican debates. I'm definitely going to run as a Republican. But now Donald Trump may be changing his tune yet again. He says he's been treated unfairly in the most recent Republican debate. And he's again hinting that he might run as a third-party candidate. He was speaking in sort of outside of Charleston, South Carolina yesterday. And he hinted that if the Republican Party keeps treating him unfairly in the way that they did in the last debate, he might go back on that pledge, saying, quote, I signed a pledge, but it's a double-edged pledge. And as far as I'm concerned, they, meaning the Republican Party, are in default of the pledge. He says that the Republicans aren't honoring the pledge. He hasn't really elaborated about it. But he said the most recent debate was a disgrace and that the Republican National Committee does a terrible job. I love this, Lewis. I could not care less about the ethics or morals of Donald Trump violating this worthless piece of paper he signed saying he would run as a Republican or not at all. Donald Trump running as a third-party candidate, even with a third of the support he has today, could give the election to the eventual Democratic nominee. And I cannot be more forcefully in favor of Trump running as a third-party candidate. I love this possibility, and I think everybody should do anything they can to promote Donald Trump, encourage Donald Trump to do exactly that.
Agreed. That piece of paper, not legally binding at all. Who cares? Doesn't matter. It's a piece of garbage.
And Trump says it's not even morally binding, which is interesting.
Yeah, well, that's Trump's moral compass. It's questionable and very strange. Sure. please run as an independent if you don't win.
The scenario I sort of envision is, we know from Trump's personality that if the Republicans get to the convention over the summer without a nominee, right, if no one has made it past that finish line that they need in order to secure the Republican nomination before the convention, the Republican establishment will likely come together at that convention, and they're not going to say, let's coalesce support around Donald Trump. They're going to say, let's coalesce support under someone other than Donald Trump. More than likely, based on Trump's personality, he would see that as the Republican Party treating him very unfairly. And I could very easily imagine that in that case, he would cry out and say, that's it. I'm taking my toys and going to my sandbox and running as a third party candidate. So the longer this goes on, I hope Trump does pick up more delegates in the states to come, because the longer this goes without a nominee, the more likely it becomes Republican insiders decide who to coalesce behind to get Trump out, and that will make it more likely Trump flips out and runs as a third-party candidate. That's the scenario that I see.
He already thinks and feels he's been treated unfairly.
Right.
All of this whole time, and which may very well be true, because we know the Republican establishment does not want him to be the nominee.
No doubt about it whatsoever. So we'll continue to follow it. I say run third party, Donald, please, by all means. Okay, the next Republican primary is in South Carolina. I have very, very disturbing poll data for you. PPP, which is an admittedly Democratic pollster, polled South Carolina Republicans. And I don't even want to talk about the sort of lead, right? I mean, Donald Trump has a lead. He's at 35%. Cruz and Rubio are each at 18%, 10% for John Kasich. Fair enough. I want to talk about some of the specific questions that South Carolina Republicans have been polled on. South Carolina Republicans are nutty, Lewis. I mean, their political views are outrageous. Let's put this up on the screen for people who are watching along with us. I'll tell you about some of the findings from this poll. 30% of South Carolina Republicans, this is just crazy. 30% of South Carolina Republicans wish the South had won the Civil War. Now, from that group who thinks who wishes the South had won the Civil War, Donald Trump has 38% of those, and Ted Cruz has 35% of those. So overwhelmingly, if you are a Republican that supports the idea that the South, it would have been better for the South to win the Civil War, you are very likely to be either a Trump or Cruz supporter. 20% of South Carolina Republicans, 1 in 5, want to ban gay people from even entering the United States. What do you do with the ones that are already here? I don't know. I guess they're allowed to stay reluctantly. And of those who support banning gays, a plurality, 31%, support Donald Trump. 60% of South Carolina Republicans support banning Muslims from entering the United States. 80% of them are Trump supporters. Absolutely incredible. 67%. Something about these numbers that don't make exact sense, Lewis, but we will go back and take a look at that. Okay, continuing. 50 unusual numbers here, but we will get to the bottom of that.
Maybe it's that these people support the ideas of both candidates.
Yes,
that could be
that may well be. 54% of South Carolina Republican voters support the Confederate flag in the Capitol building. Again, those are disproportionately likely to be concentrated among Trump and Ted Cruz supporters. And lastly, I don't know if this is low or high, only 10% of South Carolina Republicans think that whites are literally a superior race to other races. So, Lewis, let's get back and talk about this. When you hear that 10%, 1 in 10 South Carolina Republicans think whites are the superior race, does that strike you as shockingly high or low, given what else we know about South Carolina Republicans?
I think if we're talking about South Carolina Republicans here, I think that seems a little bit low when you look at the rest of those numbers.
Right. Yeah.
When you look at
hey, 20%.
It's kind of a relief actually to hear that
it's
number.
Only that low. It's really funny how Donald Trump is associated with these so-called New York values by Ted Cruz, but it's actually Trump and Cruz's supporters that are the closest ideologically. I mean, on most of these outrageous positions, South Carolina Republicans are very likely to support either Trump or Cruz. I mean, Trump and Cruz, for all of the critiques about he's a liar, he has the New York values, blah, 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 they are coalescing the extremist Republican support, which is pretty fascinating. a viewer emailed me about the Civil War thing and said, David, the North would be better off if the South had won the Civil War. They would have separated. The northern states wouldn't be by and large subsidizing the southern states, and the North would be way better off as a country.
Well, who knows if that's really how it would have happened.
Right.
Right. And we wouldn't have a lot of oil, Dave. I mean, oil is big business. We need Texas for big oil, right?
Right.
And we wouldn't have all that beautiful warm weather either.
Well, yes, that's absolutely true. This is a really, really big story, and I want to take some time to talk about this. A federal judge has ordered Apple to help government investigators find a way into an iPhone that was used by one of the San Bernardino shooters. This is the massacre back in December, which left 14 people dead in California. Specifically, the FBI is telling, or a judge now has told Apple that they need to provide what the judge calls reasonable technical assistance to get information out of Syed Farook's iPhone 5C. Apple is essentially being asked to build a program that would allow the FBI to try passwords over and over again. The iPhone 5C, previously owned by Syed Farook, has the security method where if you put in the wrong password, I believe it's 10 times, the phone totally locks up and it'll destroy the data that's on it. So what the FBI wants Apple to build for them is a program that will allow them to try password after password after password without the data being deleted after incorrect password entries. Federal prosecutors told the court they can't get into this phone because they just don't know his passcode and they really want to get in. Now, this has started huge controversy. The FBI says this isn't about surveillance more broadly, right? We want to get into this one phone. Apple says they're against it, and that they're against it because this does have broader privacy implications. So here is a quote from Apple about this particular issue, which I will put up for you. Apple CEO Tim Cook said, "If the government can use the All Writs Act to make it easier to unlock your phone, it would have the power to reach into anyone's device to capture their data. The government could extend this breach of privacy and demand that Apple build surveillance software to intercept your messages, access your health records or financial data, track your location, or even access your phone's microphone or camera without your knowledge." And they go on to say that no reasonable person would find this acceptable, saying the government suggests this tool could only be used once on one phone, but that's simply not true. Once created, the technique could be used over and over again on any number of devices. In the physical world, it would be the equivalent of a master key capable of opening hundreds of millions of locks. This is setting up a really big legal showdown, and Apple claims that the top priority for them is the protection of customer privacy. The FBI and law enforcement say we are being hampered in our ability to prevent crimes, to investigate crimes by these encryption technologies. This has the potential, Lewis, to go all the way up to the Supreme Court.
No doubt. I think what strikes me as strange about this is that you would think that the most important information here is who was texting this guy, who was he texting, who was calling him, who was he calling.
Okay.
That information would be available from whoever his provider was.
Outside of that phone.
Outside of that phone. That seems to be the most important information that I can think of. Okay, that being said, there's important information on the phone, of course. And I think Apple should comply here. Now, from my understanding,
Really?
Apple could say, we will do this on our end. You hand us the phone, we will do this, we'll give you the data that's on the phone. Now, what the FBI is asking for, I think, is absurd, and Apple should not do that. But Apple cannot say that it is impossible for them to do this without breaching everyone's security.
But hold on a second. I heard you say that it's ridiculous, but that Apple should do it.
What I'm saying is that Apple has the ability.
Yeah.
Apple does not need to create a backdoor to give to the FBI that they can use on any phone so that the FBI can get the information on this one phone.
But the precedent is, and I think this is the key thing, they would be under government order creating something which allows them to do that on any phone. It doesn't mean that they are all of a sudden giving this power to the FBI to do it whenever they want.
Well,
and I think
what you have to do is you have to...
This gets at what's really at stake here, Lewis, which is more than the data on the cell phone. We have a legal system that is built on precedent. The precedent would be set for the FBI if Apple isn't able to successfully appeal this ruling, that they can say, hey, we have precedent here for forcing companies like Apple to create software on our say-so to get into encrypted data. And the precedent is what is absolutely huge here. And I think it is very dangerous to set precedent where the government can mandate companies like Apple create software to get them into whatever it is they want to get into. I think it's hugely dangerous.
Okay, it's maybe it is hugely dangerous, but this information could be hugely important. So while you might be setting a precedent, can we have faith that orders will be given with in only the right circumstances to do this type of thing with discretion?
No, we can't have.
You can't.
I have no faith in that.
I mean, look at the world we already live in when it comes to surveillance.
Yeah.
I mean, haven't we already crossed this line?
Well, that's the point. That's why we can't have faith in the fact that this won't be used as precedent to do this in other situations.
But you don't. I mean, even in my particular case, because of the legal precedent it would set, you say you're not agreeing with me on this one.
I'm not. I don't think it should be done because of the legal precedent that it would set. That's my specific reason for not agreeing with it.
And if this happens down the road, you think that this will never happen. This situation will never come up again with another manufacturer, another company. I mean, other companies might be a lot more willing to do this. And
it very well could come up. And especially if other companies are more willing, why set up the precedent? Make it more difficult. That's my view. And hey, by the way, I'm not even an Apple fanboy. I don't own any Apple stuff. Louis, you can testify to that, right?
I can testify to that. It's kind of a separate situation, though.
Yeah, no, but just as a side note, in case people were going to say I'm an Apple fanboy and blah, blah, blah. Okay, I'm on Twitter at @Pakman if you want to tell me that I'm right about this. Louis is on Twitter at @LouisMotamedi if you want to tell him he's wrong. Other opinions, I guess, I don't know, email us or something like that.